Hey everybody, Deathblade here, coming at you from my daughter's room and my office. They're one and the same, as you can see from the little dudes looking over my shoulder. I'm coming at you with a little bit of a different video today to explain the backstory very quickly. I made an announcement recently about my next translation project. I've been kind of talking about it a bit on Twitter and in announcements on Wuxia World. Long story short is I am not going to be doing another translation right away. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. It's been about 5 years straight almost of just relentless translating, and I'm kind of feeling a little bit of fatigue. So I'm going to take a break and I will come back to translating at a certain point after that. In the meantime, while I'm taking this break, I'm going to finish writing a novel that I've been tinkering with behind the scenes for a couple years now, and I hope to finish all the planning in the next week or two. I'm doing that in my spare time, and then when I'm done translating Sage Monarch, I will just bust out this novel and most likely self-publish it on Amazon. So keep an eye out for that. I'll obviously talk about it more in the future. But I did a poll recently. I put it on Twitter. I put it on Wuxia World. I'll also include a link below if you're interested in participating. I asked people what they thought about a couple different potential titles for the novel. I wanted to get people's opinions without them knowing anything about the novel. I just wanted to see which title appealed to people the most. And I also asked for opinions about what they would like to see, what the readers or the people who participated in the poll would like to see in a novel from me. Now, I got a ton of responses, like many responses. I'm going to just scroll through the spreadsheet here that I exported out of Google Documents or Google Forms or whatever. And I'll put it up on the screen here for you to see it. And you can just take a look at some as I'm talking. I've highlighted a handful because obviously there's a lot of repetition. A lot of people said the same thing, wording it in different ways. And of course, there's many suggestions. I obviously can't appeal, or I can't appease everybody and provide what everybody wants. But there was a lot of repetition in terms of overall themes. So I think going through this list will give a really interesting insight into what the readers are thinking. The readers of these Chinese fantasy genres, wuxia, xianxia, xianxia. Of course, most of these people that participate in the poll, I think, are going to be ones who read the serialized web novel content. So anyway, this is an interesting insight into what people like that want. So perhaps people who are translators might find this useful. And there are also a few funny responses as well. So let me switch the view here. Okay, so the ones that I highlighted are the ones I'm going to talk about. This person mentioned a clear and very defined power level and growth system, and that is definitely going to happen. I have already planned out the magic system, the cultivation system. It is going to be pretty much a hard magic system. In other words, there are rules and numbers behind everything. It isn't just me coming up out of my imagination and all of a sudden saying, oh wow, he can beat this guy randomly. Everything is built into a rule system. I'm not necessarily going to reveal that in the novel itself, but it's behind there to power everything. This person asked for a good look at plants and natural landscapes, potentially with them interacting with some key things included. Well, that is a very interesting request, and sadly, I'm going to have to say that I cannot provide that, and the reason being that there actually are not going to be plants and natural landscapes in this novel. Now, what does that mean? Well, you'll have to wait and see. Unless you follow me religiously on Twitter, you might be able to piece together what kind of novel I'm writing, because I've hinted at it and I've done polls in the past about future novels. So going through more here, this one I thought was kind of funny. Somebody said, what would you like to see most in a novel by me? A will eternal. I guess, don't know what that means, but I am not going to simply rewrite a will eternal, sorry to say. Going down more. Now, this is the best place where we'll see this all in one place. I put this in alphabetical order, by the way. So obviously this is all stuff to do with character, and a lot of people mention that in different ways and in different parts of the form that they filled out. But basically, people asking for character building, development, growth, progression, character-driven stories. And yes, this story is going to be all about that. I am putting a lot of work into creating the main character of this story. He has a personality, he has family, he has relationship history, he has background. I know all about it. He is kind of like becoming a real person to me. And I'm not necessarily going to go into all that stuff, all that backstory stuff in the novel itself, but it's all there. He is not just some, generic MC that I'm plotting into a power fantasy with action sequences. It's going to be a lot more than that. Now, this is an interesting thing, which somebody asked for cowboys cultivating with guns. To be honest, I want to do a story like that. A while back, I did a poll, and one of the suggestions I put into that poll was what I called steampunk cultivation, I think, or maybe I called it xianxia steampunk. But I think a steampunk cultivation novel would be really cool. I know there are some out there that already exist, but maybe one day I'll do that. Who knows? All right, moving on down. Somebody says Elvis lives. Okay, that's good to know. I like how one person put to know. I mean, you could have just left that part blank if you want. In any case, this mentions emotional realism and good emotional motivation. I think that goes hand in hand with what I just mentioned about the character. He is, in my mind, a real character with real emotions, and there are emotional things driving him. And not to make it seem like this is going to be some cry fest or all about feelings and whatnot. It's not. It's going to be a fast-paced action adventure story. But he is a real person. He does have emotions, and there will be that stuff in there. Going down a little bit further here, as you can see, there's a lot of responses, so I couldn't possibly go through all of them with you guys here. This person mentions loopholes, basically where the author forgets about people and then doesn't give them a satisfying ending. Definitely not going to do that. I am planning out the story ahead of time. I'm not just creating a setting and then just going to run off and just continually add content like a lot of the web novel authors do. This is a self-contained story, and the initial novel is going to be relatively short, which is why I can put it out so fast, and hopefully I can do further content and make it into a larger series. But it's not just going to be something where I randomly throw in somebody and then they never get mentioned again. I don't have time to go through this entire thing. This is a pretty long comment. Basically, the first sentence is, I think, enough to sum it up. Oops, that kind of messes it up. It says, in short, meaningful consequences and real stakes. And then it kind of goes into a long sort of example. And yeah, that's exactly the kind of story that I am planning to write. This is not going to be unrealistic in terms of how the characters respond. My main character is going to get thrown into a lot of, hard, bad, dangerous situations that have a lot of stuff thrown at him. And yeah, people can die, and they will die in this novel. Maybe even characters that people care about, because it's supposed to be a realistic cultivation type world. Continuing onward. No restart in the middle. Don't worry, that's not going to happen. One of the reasons why I think that happens a lot of times in the serialized web content is the authors get a good thing going, they have support, they're making money, and they have to keep their story going. And I think, honestly, the restart a lot of times is them running out of ideas, or perhaps they just need to get going into a different direction and they don't have an easy way to do that, so they restart it. This is not going to be like that. This is not intended to be a story that goes on forever and ever. It will have a beginning and an end, and so obviously there's not going to be just a random restart in the middle. As you can see here, 3 people in a row mentioned romance just from the get-go, and there's a lot of other entries that mention romance. I don't want to make any promises about this. One thing that I have found is that, at least among people who read my work, I feel very bad for them because there has not been a lot of good romance in what I have translated. In I Shall Seal the Heavens, there technically is some. In A Will Eternal, technically kind of there is a little bit. In Sage Monarch, there's none. So that's like all of my body of work. There's basically no romance. In my original novel, Legends of Ogre Gate, I do have a little bit of romance, and I'm not going to get into it for spoiler purposes. If you haven't checked out Legends of Ogre Gate, you can check out the link in the description. But there's a touch of it, not too much. So for this one, I do want to throw that kind of stuff in there. I don't want to beat people over the head with it, but I do plan to have it in there. That said, in my experience in writing, a lot of times the characters take a life of their own and they start doing things that I don't expect them to do, so I'm not really sure what will happen eventually. Continuing on here, fun with a deeper meaning, a good progression system, and and world building where everything doesn't always revolve around the main character, but the world has a life of its own. That is definitely what I'm doing. I am spending a lot of time right now in my spare time building the world. And it is a complex world with a long history, and there are many secrets. And as I'm planning all this stuff out, I say, okay, I want the world to be like this. And then I think, well, wait a second. What does that mean for this aspect over here? And then what does that mean for this aspect over here? And right now, it's a lot of different moving pieces that I'm trying to work together into a complex world. The point is that the main character will be navigating a world that is already created and existed, and his reactions will not change the world because the world has already been created, unless he changes the world, which he theoretically could. But point is, definitely going to have this. 2 per day. Okay. I think this person is expecting me to be releasing a novel in serial form. I'm not going to be serializing it. I am going to be writing it, editing it, and releasing it as a novel. So yeah, it's not going to be 2 per day. As for my quota, I might have a 2 chapter per day quota so that I can finish it in the amount of time that I have allotted for it. This is a good one. We must have a character called Deathblade. I have thought in the past about writing a story about a character named Deathblade. If I did that, it would absolutely have to be a comedy, I think. I could not write a serious novel about someone named Deathblade when my own online name is Deathblade. So, yeah, I think that's it. Oh, no, continuing on. So, world building, I think that's the last one, yeah. I did mention this a minute ago. There is definitely world building. I am using a kind of popular world building software, actually, to manage all of this stuff and manage the characters, manage the magic system and the backstories and everything. I'm putting a lot of work into the novel leading up to it so that the actual writing process will go smoothly, and like I mentioned before, the characters are going to be inhabiting and navigating a real world that I have already put a huge amount of thought into in terms of designing it and working on its history and stuff. So I thought this was quite a bit of interesting information that maybe could be useful to people who are interested in writing this stuff, or maybe just interesting to people who are interested in the genre itself. I want to thank everybody who participated in the poll so far. If you haven't, again, I'll put a link in the description below, and you can feel free to cast your vote on the title. So anyway, I'll put the link below and you can check it out. Also, I'm interested in knowing what you think of the comments that I highlighted, and were you reading some of the other comments as I was scrolling through? Did you see any that jumped out to you as being funny or interesting, or echo what you think? Do you have any input about the question as well? What kind of stuff you'd like to see in a novel from me? Please do leave that stuff in the comments below. I love to see it. If you like my channel and the content I produce, please check the links in the description below, and especially sign up for my email list. I don't send out a lot of emails. I'm going to actually start getting more regular and sending out emails, and that's the best way to get news also about my new releases. I have a lot of stuff coming up. I have a secret project I'm working on that hopefully I'll be able to reveal in the next week or two that you who subscribe to my channel will definitely be interested in. I have a role-playing game coming out. I have this novel that I'm working on. I have ebooks, I Shall Seal the Heavens, coming out soon, audiobooks, all kinds of stuff. So the best way to keep in touch is via email list, or you can follow me on Twitter or any other of the social media links below. That's it for this video. I'll see you next time. Godspeed.